it's very, very challenging to go from 4,000 parts or components in the average petrol delivery bike to 94 parts in ours, but maintaining the balance, the weight, which obviously comes with the safety and the durability and so on. So there's a lot of science behind it, but you just have to use experts. So when we look at the modularity of the management team, do we need to employ someone, or can we contract the very best people that we need? And that's from marketing agencies or PR agencies to admin staff, accountancy. Do we need that great big headcount, or can we do things slightly more modular?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Lulu. What's the difference between entrepreneurs and 99% of the population? Entrepreneurs are doers. Entrepreneurs have a bias towards action. They don't necessarily sit and strategize for years. They don't get deterred if they hear no's. They are of the mentality that they can put something out there that may not necessarily be perfect, but they're going to learn from that experience anyway. And my guest is no stranger to that. Adam Ridgway is the founder and CEO of One Moto. It's a UAE-born mobility company that is trying to electrify the entire fleet of bikes and vans that are used in delivery services. It's a very big and ambitious project, and most people would have been deterred by it. You would probably think you're going to need millions of dollars to get this off the ground, a huge team, manufacturing, R&D. There's definitely lots to think about. But because of limited resources, Adam found some really creative ways to get his company off the ground. His story is very inspiring. One Moto is already winning several awards in the UAE, and there's definitely lots to learn here from this discussion, so let's tune in. Thanks for coming, Adam.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a while, huh?
It has. Well, I mean, we met not so long ago. And we spoke, and you told me about your very ambitious project, and I was thinking this guy is crazy. So I think it's very good to tell our listeners, a little bit about the journey and kind of what got you here.
Yeah, so 15 years ago, I arrived in the UAE, and I come from a background in my early days. So teenager, I started up companies and set up companies for companies. And that was sort of really the journey. So I had the business acumen, but I didn't really have any real knowledge or wisdom, of course. And then, but I didn't really know where I fitted in the world. And it was only after many years, and then you look back and you look at your, say, career path, and it's all been related to creativity and creative problem solving, as well as the business acumen. So you put all of that together, and I had a 7-year career in television, both in front of the camera, behind the camera, production. It was an incredible journey. And then I arrived here, and I got a job in a TV production company. After about 6 months, I couldn't handle the no every day. It was just full of no's, and that's not my approach to life at all. So I set up my first company. 12 years later, managed to exit 4 companies that I set up. And One Moto, that we're going to be talking about, was a bit of a side hustle. And then it got to a point where I thought, am I going to do the same thing for the next decade, or do I want to do something that really makes a difference? And the business opportunity just got a bit too big. The market was just too ready. And I thought, right, I'm going to go gung-ho. Plus I was turning 40,
Okay.
and it was that sort of midlife crisis. Am I going to do something? I decided to go all in.
So not buy a Porsche or a
No.
yacht or something. You decided to start another business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that, yourself, it's that hunger. And it's not the money. The financial bit doesn't really tick my boxes and trigger me to go and achieve. It's the deal. But I think from the creative point of view, from having branding agencies, video production companies, and I suppose all the other companies I've set up, is it's seeing something from concept that is just an idea. And I believe everything in life starts with a sketch. And I've always got my sketch pad on me. So it's starting with a sketch, looking at a problem, how can that be applied? And my driver is seeing that in production, or seeing a customer drive it, or seeing a customer buy something because of the brand you've created or the product you've created. And that's where we are.
So you didn't study engineering. You're not into car design or bike design or any of these, and then you decided to move from production And you had branding, right, and production companies, and you decided, okay, I'm going to build electric bikes and electric vans and all of that. How does one go from like this to that, you know?
I don't know. Why are you
You know,
asking me?
like here you are running an agency, branding agency, producing videos and content for clients, doing really well at what you were doing.
It's it's a great question. I've been asked it a few times,
Yeah.
mostly by myself.
Okay.
Like, how do you go into this? And one of the, I suppose one of the catalyst for it was I've been a biker most of my life. I don't join the clubs and go out on big trips. That's not me. But the convenience of getting on two wheels, but the sensory environment as well. So you ride and you can smell different things. You're open to everything because there's no roof on top of you, right? And it was that opportunistic and opportunity, I suppose, of seeing that there was a void, but also being very astute to seeing where there's a potential. But that comes from being a business person. You're always looking for an opportunity, and solving a problem. So yeah, I don't come from an engineering background, but I do come from a creative problem solving background, and I studied, but it was only high school. I didn't do too well at high school because I didn't really know where I fitted. And then over the years, I sort of found where my personality and where my skill set is. I'm still finding it really, and I thought let's just employ the right people that can achieve this dream, I suppose. And it was in 2016 where I saw I was very fortunate. I had a classic car that I wanted to get converted to electric, and I went to 3 garages. 3 said, yeah, I can do it, and 3 failed.
Yeah.
And then during that time, I walked out of one of these garages, and I just saw this spectrum of petrol delivery bikes. And I used to ride a Vespa here for 7 years, winter, summer. I loved it. And I came out, I thought, I wonder if anyone's producing those electric. Not retrofitted, but actual electric. So my research was local, then it was regional, then it was international. And I saw that Talabat had just been sold or just really started to ramp up operations in the UAE. Then I started looking at Kareem, which was also a customer in my past life, and said, what do you need from a delivery bike? So I went and spoke to customers. And during that research phase, I thought there's something in this. And I believe it was around the same sort of time that Carfu, delivering petrol. And I thought, no, if society has got to a stage where we're so lazy that we're having petrol delivered, then, we're failing as a human race.
I think it's a great service,
I
by the
was
way.
so
We use it
wrong.
all the
It
time.
is the greatest service.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Free plug for Carfu.
I had the founder on the show, actually, Rashid
Really?
Al Yes, yes.
We've been speaking anyway. We'll go into that conversation another time. But it's absolutely incredible
Yeah.
what they do, and it was just that opportunity. And I thought, is this the right time to create something that can really make a difference? Then when you start looking at the environmental impact, the rider welfare, and the massive issues they face, the profitability of the industry from like the F&B industry, the aggregators, the food delivery, or the operators, the fleet operators, there's a solution. So I just called on the expertise of a network that I curated over many years. This is my goal. This is what I want to achieve. Can we do it? And then with the right expertise, the answer was yes.
So it's very interesting for everyone who's listening, I think, to highlight is that your process was do the research. Basically, it's not like you had an idea or you had a hypothesis, right? You had something in mind, and you went and you spoke to customers before you even had a company, right? So you
Yeah.
got that validation basically before you had even started or spent a single dollar on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, so there was engineers in the UK, there was friends of mine that have various different supply chain contacts. And then being a designer, I'm sort of sketching out what do you need, having many, many years of riding experience of various different bikes, what's really helpful, what do you need from a bike? But I know that from a personal perspective, but then what the customers need from a fleet perspective. These things are workhorses. They're doing thousands and thousands of kilometers every week, month, year. So we need to create something that is durable, it's reliable, it looks great, but then also why are customers buying a certain vehicle? So the psychology of it, which then comes from the brand and experience, what will make someone buy. And it's not always about the price of something. It's not always about the value that it brings. You know, Apple is all about lifestyle,
Yeah.
selling the brand or showing you what you can have. So all of that experience, you then apply that to a product, and you're building a brand for yourself using all the values that you've got or had in the past and built over many years. And then it's just the application, the right team, the right idea, and there's a huge amount of luck. But you can also speak to customers for validation, but it doesn't mean they're actually going to be spending money and buying them. So there is a risk.
I think that's a very, very important point, because one of the biggest, I think, hurdles when it comes to startups and people leaving their corporate jobs and starting something is they think that there has to be something ready, you know, before I go and start talking to people. And then there's also the idea that, why am I going to talk to customers? Maybe they're going to steal my idea, or maybe I shouldn't tell so many people because, you know, someone might, you know, go ahead and do it. So there's a lot of that fear, and it's so known in entrepreneurial circles, right, that the idea is really worth nothing. I mean, unless you're like a scientist and you've come up with some breakthrough. But I think for the 99% of us, an idea is an idea unless you get it done.
Yeah, it's the execution is everything. That's where the value is. And there is a tremendous amount of, I suppose, I wouldn't say fear. I think competition's a mindset. And dependent upon the market size and scalability and so on, when you really start looking at the market that you're going to enter, if there are other players in the market, it really doesn't matter. It's what can you do that's different. You don't have to be different. You just have to do it a little bit better.
A little bit better,
and
exactly.
In my eyes, when I build a business or a product or a service, I will never, ever go into a price war, because that's hemorrhaging your bottom line. It's hemorrhaging your cash flow. Your payment terms can be tweaked, but when it comes to your application, what more value can you add? And if you're adding more value, that's also adding to the relationship.
Yeah.
So you spend time with those people, potential customers, and you find out so much more. You add value. Therefore, in the marketplace, you don't have to go into sort of
So that's so interesting, because you're in a business, so you are producing electric bikes and potentially vans and trucks for that last mile delivery. And I feel that business has been very much commoditized. Actually, I think most of these companies don't even have their own fleets, right? They probably contract a fleet company that basically handles all of the bikes and the riders and all of that, and just pay a fee. So I would imagine, and because there are so many of these companies out there, like the fleet management companies, right? You can have from the least sophisticated guy with 10 bikes to some that have thousands of bikes. And because it's a commodity, so I would imagine that the price is kind of a key, maybe, and the support would be like a key ingredient in a brand like an Amazon or a Kareem, for example, signing up with a company. You're coming to an industry which is heavily commoditized, with maybe, I would assume, something more expensive, like an electric bike, than the regular bike. So what was the initial reaction of these customers when you told them about it? And then you talked about you don't want to be in a bidding war, right? So how do you avoid that?
This is a very difficult question to answer.
Okay.
So if I go on too long, just cut me off.
Okay.
When you talk about the 3PLs, so third-party logistic fleet operators, fleet managers, some of them will own part of their fleet. They will also sublease from other suppliers that will also own a fleet. So there's so many different layers of margin that we're very aware, because we did the research. But then you've got the riders that pay for their own fuel. You've got the 3PLs that are under tremendous pressure and very small margins from the aggregators or the delivery platforms. So all of these layers of margin makes it very difficult to be a profitable business. Although there are many that are very successful, with the overheads increase in fuel, that's on the riders. They have to suffer it.
Interesting. Why is it that the rider has to pay the fuel? That doesn't make sense.
I won't get too
the business model
political into
okay.
it, but there's the gig economy around the world, the riders usually pay. There are a couple of exceptions where the companies pay the fuel, but their fuel spend is phenomenal on a monthly, yearly basis. So the riders currently pay around 9,900 dirhams a year in fuel,
Okay.
which is 29% of their gross annual salary. Now, I
Okay.
don't know if any of the listeners were to be asked, would you pay 30% of your gross annual salary just to go and then do your job? The answer is no. But the gig economy is you have to pay your own fuel. So arguably, if we can save the fuel spend on EVs, does that mean that the riders are going to benefit? Yes. But the 3PLs need to onboard the bikes in order to do so. But then you've got the capex consideration. Yes, our bikes are a third more expensive, but it depends then who you're speaking to in that say supply chain decision making management. Of if you look at what that direct purchase price is for one bike, yes, we are more expensive. If you look at what that cost saving is and where the ROI point is, that equilibrium, 3 to 5 months for the bikes, 5 to 7 months for the vans, that's saving. So if you look at the amortization over 4 years, you're saving a tremendous amount of money. If you just carry on leasing, then yes, it's going to be more expensive, but it also saves you a lot. So when we were applying, I suppose, the business model or the business case, we built our business on 5 values. One of them is affordability. Then you've got convenience. So you put those 2 in place. A lot of customers that we approached were, oh, these are more expensive. But at what position are you coming from? Are you capexing or buying them outright, or are you leasing? Leasing wasn't an option in our early years because we didn't have the capitalization to be able to lease. So then after, was it 2021 and most of 22, there's a global hiccup, and customers like, no, we want to buy, no, we want to lease, and they were flip-flopping between the two. So we had to focus away from selling and focus on securing a lease partner. Once we had that, then customers are able to lease, because then you're talking on the same macroeconomic level that they're used to. It's like for like, and you save money. And if you pass it on to the riders, they're under less pressure, less volume deliveries. They're still productive or overproductive, if you like, because of the fleet management, the telemetry. They're able to deliver more under less pressure, less time on the roads, less accidents, and it all then just starts to make sense. But there's a buy-in period that does take a long time.
So you went and you secured 150 million pounds, right? Just to be able to provide these kind of credit facilities so that people can lease.
Yeah, it's 123 million pounds sterling, so around 150 mil dollars.
Okay.
Which, for the UK market, where the gig economy is, delivery share price wasn't too good when it listed, for various different reasons. You've got talks of company X being acquired by someone else pulling out of a market, and it's because the market, and I don't really see anyone particularly to blame, it's the market boomed. And when you're in a position where the market booms, you're firefighting. You don't have the time for the strategy and to implement things in say, the correct way or for longevity. And the vehicles weren't, just globally, EVs weren't really produced for delivery. So there was nothing really to focus on. So with what we have now, we've got a facility in the UK to be able to lease these vehicles for £3 a day. Now, if the average delivery driver or rider is earning between £3.50 and £6.50 per delivery, they know that after the first delivery, they're at break even.
Wow.
They do 20 more, they're in complete profit. And again, it's speaking on that macroeconomic level. You might be at university, or you might be a single parent, or you might be someone that needs a second job. So there's that top-up income. Or you might be doing it as a full-time career option, or intermittent career option. So we need to show that you can be profitable. The responsibility of the vehicle ownership is, in the gig economy in most other parts of the world where you don't need a visa to work, is on the rider. So you just need to show them how we can make it profitable. But again, it takes buy-in. But with that facility, it's game-changing.
And is this something that you plan to do here in the UAE as well?
Yeah, it's something we've been working on for quite some time. But I think in the past couple of years, or I believe over the past couple of years, where VCs and fund managers were I suppose, bankrolling their existing portfolio. They saw One Moto as a high capex intensive
Yes.
vehicle manufacturing company. We're absolutely not,
Yeah.
just because of the modularity of how we have built the business. So access to that capital in this market, the asset finance, venture debt, and all of the other sort of synonyms around that is very difficult because you need to explain the narrative. So the subscription model of mobility, this EV ecosystem that we're building, from the data, the swappable batteries, the vehicles themselves, that's where once we get a few more, I suppose, fund managers, investment gurus really sat down to understand the business model, the potential, the fact that we're first to market, we're the only ones registered after all these years, we're onto something. We just now need that support to really catapult us, not just in the UAE, but then through the region, because no one focuses on vehicles produced for this region.
I mean, it's too bold of an idea, to be honest. And I think now I'm definitely gonna ask you about, how the nuts and bolts of the business in terms of how you got it up and running without a lot of money, which is impressive. But I think this is, I mean, it's definitely something that is absolutely bold and big and grand. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of people or entrepreneurs in the kind of the hardware type business. That's why people think, okay, software, not capital intensive, and you just run with it.
Go on, ask away.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break first, actually. So every time you think of electric vehicles, the first thing that comes to mind is like Tesla. I own a Tesla.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love the fuel saving basically part, how simple it is to kind of plug it in and charge it. The whole software update thing where you constantly have a new car, kind of, while you're still driving the same thing. But I think, hundreds of millions of dollars and like big, bold vision and all of that. And then when you and I spoke initially, I don't remember, I think it was a few months ago, about One Moto.
Yeah.
And you told me, Lulu, I've done a crowdfunding campaign and I've raised $500,000. And my reaction was, that's it, because I would expect that you would have probably gone to raise millions, at least just to get the kind of that minimum viable product out of the door. And then I see your deck, that you've shared with me recently, and you're not only building these electric bikes now initially, but you're also like manufacturing, opening assembly plants, doing fleet management software. I mean, it's like a big ambition. Then you probably need to think about servicing these and the batteries, right, and all of that. So how do you do it on $500,000? I mean, how does that work?
There was a lot of investment prior to that
Okay.
$500,000 raise.
Which you put in.
Yes. So fortunately, because I
Okay.
had those other businesses before I was very fortunate to exit. Truthfully, on camera, I rinsed those companies.
Okay.
I rinsed them dry. Fortunately, I was the only shareholder, so it was okay. But every possible dirham fills that I could get my hands on was then put into One Moto.
Okay.
And I didn't take salary for quite some time. None of this would be possible without my wife. I need to give her a credit because the patience and support, the financial support as well, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for that. But there was that belief, and I could sort of OPEX with the revenue and profit that was generated from my other companies. I was able to then fund very strategically what's important now, what do we need, what's nice to have, and then go through that journey. But also, it's the approach I think I took, which was a bit, I'd say it was novel, because I haven't heard anyone else do it. And it was very much, how can I build a business with, say, limited funds, but also get the MVP out there, get some early traction? How do we then raise? How do we put a valuation on it? I'd never had a conversation with a VC in my life up until early 2020. And And that was a baptism of fire. It was wonderful. All the vocabulary, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
So it was, how can I build this business that's modular, doesn't get superseded by technology? I'm not going to run out of capital in order to get to a certain stage. But also, how could I sit in front of a potential investor? Sorry, the biggest, most important part was, how can I build a business that will grow through sales? Not build a business that relies on venture
Growth at
capital.
all costs.
Yeah, and when you read things on LinkedIn, and it's all about growth, and then everyone's saying, no, it's about profitability.
Well,
It's
now
just,
it shifted. So if you were the growth type guy, you're
yeah,
screwed.
but it should have been about profitability from the start. I understand different businesses have the different KPIs, but I thought, if we can create something that's modular in its management, the vehicles are modular in their makeup.
What do you mean by modular?
Modular, so if the battery or the energy source steers away from lithium ion to another, and there's multiple options, how can we be defensible that if we then use hydrogen or graphene or supercapacitors, whatever it may be, how can then that power our vehicles
Okay.
without us investing so much into battery tech that then becomes dormant?
Okay.
Because that's going to cripple any business. So, and we don't invest in battery tech. We use the very best components, very best cells in the market, and we put those in our vehicles. If they get superseded, great. We'll reverse engineer our vehicles to use the new source. And that's the same sort of thing from all the different components. And it's very, very challenging to go from 4,000 parts or components in the average petrol delivery bike to 94 parts in ours, but maintaining the balance, the weight, which obviously comes with the safety and the durability and so on. So there's a lot of science behind it, but you just have to use experts. So when we look at the modularity of the management team, do we need to employ someone, or can we contract the very best people that we need? And that's from marketing agencies or PR agencies to admin staff, accountancy. Do we need that great big headcount, or can we do things slightly more modular? And then, how can I build a business that doesn't rely on government intervention? So a lot of EVs, as you know, you've got a home charging port here, but then you have the public charging. One of the values is about convenience. So if you live live and or work in a high-rise building,
Yeah.
and you've got your basement car parks, I might be, let's say I'm a tenant and I live in an apartment, I might only be there a year. I'm not going to want to invest. If I did want to invest, is the landlord going to allow it? Is the facilities management? Who pays for it? I can't rely on the government to pay for it because I've got a car. That's my choice. So how can you avoid that government intervention, the need for infrastructure investment? Strip it back. Let's make sure that we can charge the most conveniently. How do you do that? 3-pin sockets, or 2-pin if you're elsewhere in the world. So our batteries are swappable. Take them out, change them in 10 seconds. They charge you a
So
3-pin.
you can buy like a couple of batteries, for example, or
If you wanted to, if you needed to.
okay.
Some of our customers have bought spare batteries and actually don't need them because they've optimized their routes. And then we've got the battery swapping tech. We've designed and the fabrication and everything else, and the IP that goes along with that is ours. But then the asset finance of those batteries, we speak to solar, say investors in solar energy or solar plants, where they're looking at that 10, 15, 20-year amortization of their investment. Let's put it into batteries. It's the same principle. It's just, lease contracts. And that's sort of how we've built that modularity around the business, which then makes us a bit more defensible to some extent. Because I believe and this is from experience, when you have a small company and you want to get to a large company as quickly as possible, because when you sit in that middle ground for any length of time, every hire can become costly. Every big decision that isn't maybe potentially costly or doesn't work out the way you hoped, that can then cripple the business. It can ruin the business entirely from those middle-sized company decisions, because you want to grow, but the investment into that growth can then be damaging. So we thought, how can we go from this small company to a large company? You can only do that through collaboration.
You've said so many important things, now with answering. I mean, I think there's the whole also saying that goes around in entrepreneurial circles is that you need to be very lean, right? And actually, the least resources that you have, the more creative you are. And that's why I think one of the critiques of entrepreneurs going out there and raising millions of dollars when they don't necessarily need to is that they end up spending unnecessarily on the wrong things. Whereas if you are, bootstrapping like you did and at the mercy of your savings and your wife and everyone else, you really need to be very creative. And I think that's such an important lesson, by the way, is that probably the entrepreneur, the typical person would have gone and open an Excel and started building this huge budget, right, to launch a business like this. Probably thought, okay, I need to hire, I don't know, 10 people here and 20 engineers and I don't know what. So the innovation really that you did is at the start is really figure out how to do a lot with like the least amount of investment through partnering or collaborating with different parties. So can you talk a little bit about, for example, the whole kind of R&D or the design or the engineering aspect of it? So who did you collaborate with there, and then how did that translate into like manufacturing and all of that stuff?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about what's happening right now as we
Okay.
speak. So from the R&D side, we've got various different individuals and teams. And we've launched, I believe it was last year, we launched the UAE's or the region's first Smart Mobility and Innovation Centre in collaboration with RIT Dubai, which is a university out of Rochester, New York, but they've got a campus here.
Yeah.
So
In Silicon Oasis, right?
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And we spoke to Dr. Youssef, who's the CEO of the university, and I had this sort of very audacious idea, and I'm all about giving back. I always have been, but also using the youth of the youth's minds. They're the creative ones. They're the creative problem solvers, but they don't have the application because they don't have the wisdom. Whereas I would like to think I do, and other people in my peer network do. So I approached them with this idea. Do you think we could get a couple of teams of students, build this into a course, like part of the academia studies, to create 3 new vehicles, hyper-modular. I've got some designs. We need engineers. We need the design students as well to put this together. Then we've got the battery banks. There's a lot that I know in the market is there, but they could be so much better, especially with the ambient heat and the summers and so on. I've got these ideas, but I don't have the answers. I believe your guys might be able to.
Wow.
So the team of guys and girls, students, the faculty, the professors, we all came together, and I don't believe in anyone working for us or anyone actually for free. So we offered them an equity stake based on their deliverables under a convertible note, and they've gone to work. So with our team, their team, we've collaborated, and we've got, from this, there's going to be 7 additional patents that are applied for. They're so modular, they're even more sustainable than the current vehicles because of the way they're built and the materials they use. And from a design, as I said, everything comes from a sketch. So I believe the new vehicles that you're going to be seeing very soon, I believe the purest form of mobility is flight. Seeing an eagle spread its wings and take off, how? A plane in the air, a flock of geese migrating, it's phenomenal. It just blows my mind, even as a child. So we've created this, the first vehicle, which is, say, retrospective in design, very classic, taking that proud breast and the dormant wing of the falcon and building that into some of the design shapes. And that will be the new Elector.
By vehicle, we mean bike
Sorry,
now.
motorbike, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then the second one, which is the age that we're in now, is the jet. So taking those aeronautical designs, applying those to the vehicle, the motorbike, and then the future of travel is space, if not, it's partly now. So we've got those designs as well, using that sort of engineering style, design, visual, and they're all built on one frame using single component parts, so the economies of scale come down when you talk about production, and they're so interchangeable. So if you wanted one bike design and then change it for another, you can do that yourself because it's so modular. That is, plus there's a few other things, but that is so incredibly game changing, I believe, because if you wanted to replace a part, you can. If you want to upgrade your vehicle, say you're a student, you don't have much money, but you can afford a One Moto, then over years when you get your first job or your situation changes or your lifestyle changes, you can just upgrade. So you should only ever need one moto for life, part of the name.
I love this. I mean, I think also because what you're doing is it's not only that you're leveraging the expertise and creativity of young people, but you're also like, invigorating them, right? Because I think the most important thing for these young people is to see their work put in practice. I mean, the biggest disconnect that we talk about all the time is that the things you learn at university, you don't get to really put them into practice. And there's this huge mismatch between like, you know, what the employers need in terms of skills and what the universities are graduating.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, imagine what you've done. You're going to these young 20-year-olds, 20 to 24, I would assume, year olds, and their professors, and you're saying, look, I trust you. I think you're creative enough. I think you have the right skills to actually build this thing that you're going to see in your eyes, you know, and experience eventually and ride and so on. It's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very creative, I must say. I mean, it's probably done, but I personally haven't seen a lot of entrepreneurs do this here.
You know, I was sat on a flight many, many years ago, and I used to manifest and visualize. I still do, or try to, and what seat I wanted on the plane.
Yeah.
And it was one of those free-for-all, Ryanair it was. And I was traveling back from Spain. I sat down, and I was one seat away from the one that I visualized. And I smiled to myself, and it was the front row of the plane.
Yeah.
And this guy, this older chap said, when you got on the plane, you had this sort of smile. I don't know what it was for. And I said, I visualized actually sitting in this seat. But he'd actually moved because he was sat with, there were 3 seats, and he moved to sit next to the person he was traveling with. So I actually did get the seat that I wanted. And this is related to your point. But after about 10 minutes of incredibly energizing chat, he said, Adam, do you believe there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, wow, that's a big question. And almost instinctively I said, yes, experience. That's the difference. And that's all that we've really applied to this campus and this innovation centre, is students have the knowledge. They're reading the books, they're going through the course and the curriculum, but they don't have the experience to then have wisdom. So to make them more valuable when they go into a job, or hopefully that some of those will actually come and work with us, is we had this very thorough brief, and which is where it all starts from. But again, that's wisdom from my side. But you have this brief that this is what needs to be achieved. You've got your work in progress, you've got your schedules. And you can say that I was part of a team that created this at a graduation age. That's then wisdom. That becomes a lot more employable. So that's all we've done. And even just going back to your question about raising capital, I heard that Rivian, Rimac, Lucid, Lordstown, all of these big EV companies had raised billions against a valuation that was really sort of sketches, designs, maybe some spreadsheets as well. But they hadn't produced anything.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've got to be tenacious, resourceful. Yes, I do have a budget. What can I do? Well, let's build a vehicle. Let's get proof of concept. Let's get some customers, early growth. Let's make sure we're post-revenue, get all the certifications that are needed for a global presence, and then start to get international growth, so distribution network. And we're now in a position that we're in 6 countries where we've sold X amount of vehicles. We've got all of these different elements within the ecosystem. Now when we raise against what we need, which means that the current shareholders need to dilute less. And we can really demonstrate that this money against these milestones will generate this.
Yeah.
But that's based on proof and fact. So a lot of the applications of how we've built One Moto, to me, make perfect sense, but not to every investor and not to every stakeholder.
I mean, there's another important thing that you said now is, you've got to have that skin in the game. I think a lot of, I mean, the examples that you've given about the global EV companies, again, raising all that money and without necessarily having a product out there. And I think you've taken on a very, very big risk, basically, and you've put in a lot of skin in the game to go and fund this. And I think it's so important. When I launched my business back in 2011, Nabbish, I also had like a bit of savings that that I had, and I just put everything in. And I think a similar story to you is that I didn't have much, so I tried to get as much as possible within what I had. And I think I don't know if people necessarily are willing to do that today. They want to maintain a certain lifestyle, maintain a certain expenditure, and then try also to go and comfortably launch a business.
Yeah, that's the big differentiator between an employer and an employee. And society needs both. Every business needs both.
Yeah.
Not everyone can be an entrepreneur, but you could be a business owner. And I believe there's a big difference there. But the one word that I think defines anyone that's an entrepreneur is spirit. And that spirit is energy, tenacity, self-belief, a little bit of an ego, because you need that confidence as well. With wisdom, you can shave that ego down, but you need a bit of that. I don't believe that in every business opportunity or situation, you need more money, which is the default go-to.
Yeah.
You just need a different strategy. And that to me has been incredible. I need to achieve this, I want to, and I will. How do I get there?
Do you think, actually, yeah, do you think you were able to do that because it's not maybe a super competitive industry, even though you're competing with like petrol bikes that are commoditized and cheap and etc. Do you think you were able to maybe build slightly slower with less money versus having, for example, in a software business where you have to like be first to market, or you have to, a certain window where you can get to a certain scale? Do you think that makes a difference, or you would have done it?
Yeah, nice
like,
question.
Either way.
Even if we started off with treble the amount that we did, I feel that, I believe that with what we've achieved was through strategy. And I don't really like strategy. My strategy always comes with whilst you're working or whilst you're moving. We don't build strategy and then start, because you've lost that curve, you've lost that first mover advantage, which is a benefit and
It's
a
a
negative
bias
as
to
well.
action, it's called.
Sorry?
It's called bias to action.
Bias to action,
Yeah,
there we go.
yeah.
And I'm not a procrastinator. I'm more, let's start walking and running, really. So when you start looking at the budget that we had, which was significant, but if we were to speak to a VC, you're never gonna fly. You're never gonna get there with what you've got. But no one actually understood what can be achieved with the right approach and with the right belief, and you're solving a problem. But would we have been to market quicker? I don't believe we could have done. It took me personally 18 months just to get the certifications, because there was no legislation written in the UAE. So we worked with RTA, with ESMA, to write those legislations, to set that benchmark so incredibly high that even Vespa, one of the brands that I hold in the highest of regard, they can't enter the market with their electric Vespa because it doesn't meet our specs. So that has put a barrier to entry. The capitalisation would have helped us accelerate, because we could have leased vehicles a lot quicker, which would have given us more of a footprint in this market and so on. But I think for 2 years old as a company, 2 years and a few months, I think we've achieved quite a lot. So I don't believe that more capital would have accelerated. It would have been, I suppose the answer in hindsight would probably have been, we've grown, but we've made a lot of costly mistakes. Whereas being more resourceful and having a budget, you're making those, say, similar mistakes, but with wisdom, smaller scale, less expensive.
So just to finish the piece on the collaboration and the partnerships, so you've collaborated with RIT University on the kind of the R&D side. And then where do you manufacture these bikes?
So we've got a manufacturing plant in China that produce exclusively for us. We've signed an agreement for Sri Lanka, and we are days away from signing an agreement for the UAE.
Okay.
That's
To manufacture here.
yes, that will be one of my greatest achievements. That's where I could say we're on a path to success, because we built the company here. It's for this market. We've got the traction here. So to actually make the vehicles here, made in the Emirates, no one's focused there globally. No one's focused on building vehicles in the Middle East.
There's one. I interviewed him as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Ralph the Bass, One Motors.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Sorry, W Motors.
W Motors, yeah.
Yeah.
But for us to go for that mass international scale, I suppose because they're very specialised,
Yeah.
and their vehicles are incredible.
They're like $1.5 million dollar
and Lightyear
cars.
as well.
Yeah.
Again, very sort of small units, but incredible engineering.
Yeah.
We're more on that sort of mass market and a real niche. So when we look at where we're placed, that in terms of assembly manufacturing is incredibly important. And in each market we enter, so we've entered LATAM in Chile, we're speaking to 6 other countries in throughout Latin America, assembly being discussed in Argentina, in Mexico, also in Kenya, Ethiopia. We're looking at domesticating that supply chain, and we're not going to be able to do the whole vehicle as of now, but over time, hopefully we will. And we reverse engineer our vehicles, again being modular, to use those certified parts, of course, to then have that vehicle made more domesticated or domestically in the territories of operation, increases in country value, it reduces the shipping, so it adds to our carbon offset and neutrality as close as we can. It creates jobs, direct and indirect. So when we talk about sustainability, it's not just the environment, which is the cliche, but it's more how can we be sustainable and pass on tremendous value to our customers. So yeah, the micro assembly plants is what I believe is the future, producing 3,000 to 10,000 vehicles a month. And these gigafactories, it's just too much risk and it's not needed. So we produce between 3,000 and 10,000 vehicles a month at the moment based on orders.
Amazing. Was there a point where you thought, okay, this is not going to work? Like, I've spent so much money, but it's not going to work.
Because money can always be re-earned.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, again, money's not my driver. The financial element, the company valuation, I suppose it's a checkbox of success or getting to a point. Setting up One Moto was, I had an exit in mind, or I have an exit in mind. I've got a very driven focus, and that's helped myself, the team, sort of just stay on track. So yeah, there's loads of options of we could do this, why don't we try this? We can build a different bike for a different market, but we don't need to. We just focus on what we've got, and that path to exit is where when I say exit, it's not a value for me personally. IPO is the exit, because I've gone through setting up companies, I've gone through personal investment in other companies, I've gone through that journey. The two parts I haven't done is close the business because they've failed, or IPO'd. And I'd rather the IPO out the two.
Well, I mean, an IPO is not really an exit per se. I mean, you're still going to be running the company.
Absolutely.
It's just like the dynamics will change.
And when it comes to setting up a business, you can be so passionate about it, but without that sort of end goal in mind, it becomes very challenging to stay on track. Mm-hmm. So the decisions you make, it's not, is this going to affect IPO? Is this going to affect exit? Is this going to affect my bonus? Some people can think that, but for us, I believe that if you've got that sort of real driven focus, you find that one thing you love, giving it as much as you can for as long as you possibly can, then that's going to lead to success. So it just keeps you focused.
So financial is, okay, so just to answer the previous question, you haven't really thought about quitting or stopping. You haven't had a big challenge where you thought, okay, I'm like, or almost like a near fatal challenge.
I'd say cash flow has been an issue.
Okay.
Even now, it's a consideration. You know, we need to be sort of careful, but we're going from that small to large business. As I said, we need to be very strategic in our decisions. A little anecdote, around 18 months, I'd say 17 months and 2 weeks, I went into an office of a government department and I said like this, and I was a little bit irate, calm but very stern in what I said. I was just fed up. And I said, look, we've been doing this for so long now. Your team need to get their act together. And the CEO that I was meeting, he put his hand on my forearm and he said, Adam, have you ever done this before? And I went, no. And he said, nor have we. Let's work together. And I thought, that's what I've been trying to do for 18 months nearly. And within 2 weeks, the certifications were got. But that was 18 months. And at some point, it's, at what point do you give up? At what point do you say, okay, it's not going to happen? But it was literally that was my sort of breaking point. And it was only when he said, let's work together, we haven't done this before. It was that realization of, I'm trying to force something that's never been done before to a government department. If they make a wrong decision or a bad decision or a non-thought out decision, that could cost jobs, lives, and everything else, right? So it absolutely has to be to this level. And I still think 18 months was too long, but I'm so glad it was because it's helped our defensibility.
But I think also, you know, kudos to the UAE, right? I mean, you're not an Emirati, you're a British, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, expat living here, you know, trying to build a business here, and there you are sitting in the government office, you know, talking to the decision makers about issuing a new type of certification that hasn't been done before. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, think about it. Can you imagine doing that in the UK?
No, not at all. You know, I was very, very fortunate. I had, in my early days, when I sort of recently arrived 15 years ago, I had some Emirati connections that then over time became friends. And being invited to suhoors and iftars, and I didn't know what to wear. What do you bring? What do you take? What do you say? I just didn't know the etiquette, didn't know anything. And it was incredible. And it also, within those early months, Dubai and the UAE became home because of that culture, because of society, because of the hospitality. And it's about, you know, you hear people that have come over to the UAE, it takes ages to get something done, and no one works, everyone's lazy, regardless. And it's so not true.
So not true.
And I don't know whether this is common knowledge, but my belief is you can have a meeting for an hour and spend 45 minutes talking about life, family, and so on.
Yeah.
But all that is doing is just for those two people to understand, do my values align with yours?
Yeah.
And if they do, maybe we can be friends, maybe we can work together. And that's no different to any part of the world.
Yeah.
But in the West, it's very transactional.
Yeah.
I'll be there, I commoditize time in the West. Over here in the Middle East, we don't commoditize time. It's, I'll give you my time, which is my gift, and however long that takes, then so be it. So I really feel that with my early stage connections and my choice to integrate into society, Arab culture, understanding Islam more, that then helps you, right? And when you then go through anything in business, you understand how to approach business, life, relationships, personal interactions, and it's been incredible.
Final words, just for entrepreneurs that are listening out there. Any piece of advice, just to wrap with?
My advice, I suppose I'm in a position because I've done it, but not coming from any position of success. You don't always need more money. You need a different strategy. And crikey, tenacity is one of those elements of spirit that you absolutely have to have. Your network is probably the biggest asset you can have. If you surround yourself with people with that tremendous energy, that will support you. But you also need those people, those strangers, that if you can't pitch the idea to, you can't explain it within a few seconds, you're probably doing it wrong. You need people to say no to you. Whereas a lot of entrepreneurs with so much passion, their audience are going to go, oh yeah, I think that's a great idea. But you need those naysayers. So yeah, my advice is if you've got that thing that you love, give it everything you've got for as long as you possibly can, and then you will be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for your kind words. I really hope that, you know, everything does go in the way that
I'm
you
sure
believe.
it will. You're already on a great path. Thanks,
you.
Adam. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Conversations with Lulu with Adam Ridgway. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to learn more about One Moto, visit one-moto.com. Also, you can visit the show's website, conversationswithlulu.com, to check out all the other episodes or to reach out to me. And you can also reach out to me on all social media platforms at Lulu Khazin. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this show. And if you enjoy the content, don't forget to share, give us a rating and a review. See you in a few weeks.